Hello and welcome back to the Historical Humans YouTube channel, and welcome back to Historical Humans Reacts. And today we are back on r/archaeology, where we're going to actually look at one of the questions that was posed on the thread and actually talk a little bit about it. And the topic of this thread are, what are the downsides of being an archaeologist? For those of
Yeah.
you who weren't familiar, there's usually two main branches of archaeology that people work in. There's public archaeology, and then there is academic archaeology.
Yep.
Academic archaeology are the pretentious ones that do research, and they're usually the top theorists in the field. And
It-
I joke, I poke fun
yeah, if
at
you're
it.
wondering where that voice came from, he uh he got his undergrad at Northern Illinois. So there, that should explain everything. There's definitely bias from different schools as to what is and isn't good archaeology.
Yeah, so you have the academic side, which is a lot of researchers doing their own interest, trying to push the
Mhm.
envelope of known information. And then you actually have the public sector, which, thanks to federal historic preservation laws, require that anytime federal funding is done on a construction project, archaeology needs to be done to make sure nothing's getting destroyed or to see what is actually there.
Yeah, and that is a United States law. And let's as we get into this and talk more about it, I think we should go in and just read the question just a little bit here. So the question posted on r/archaeology here on Reddit is by a first year archaeology student in Australia who has chosen archaeology as their major without really knowing too much about it. They just like the idea of the field of archaeology and being outsides, as being an outdoorsy person, which, as someone who is not a particularly outdoorsy person, I can say enjoying walking for miles and digging and things like that can definitely help the job.
I know for me, before I got into archaeology, I was in the same boat as this person where I jumped into the field without having too much forethought or foresight. I just knew I liked history and that this seemed like a really cool job, and I was very gung ho about it. But I didn't quite understand the intricacies of what came along with it. And I grew up in the city where we didn't have mud, we didn't have bugs, we didn't like go out and walk forest for fun. Like you would do hikes, but they were paved trails mainly.
Yep. Yeah, I grew up around a lot of tick grass, which
Oh,
just makes you want to set fire to the grass rather than be in it.
yeah, I hate to grass.
So they have a similar boat here too. I jumped on board because I liked archaeology and history and the idea of all that stuff, without really being an outdoorsy person and also being an idiot and having no idea where my life was going from here.
But
So this is normal. This is a normal thing to wonder. This is the same with, I think, most any major is wondering. All right, now I'm here. What the hell do I do?
yeah, and with archaeology, there's kind of a pretty solid divide between education levels. And this is speaking primarily from the United States, and I would even go as far to say a bit of Canadian archaeology as well. But you usually get into
America.
the field with a bachelor's degree, which allows you to go out and do shovel testing and like public archaeology. You're able to get a job in the public sector, which you can either work for a government agency or you can work for a private company that actually does the cultural review to basically satiate the requirement of the law. So you're required to
But
do the work before construction commences.
yeah, anyway, we're here to talk about some of the downsides to the various
Yes.
approaches of archaeology and to just being an archaeologist themselves. And we do have uh, the Murrian man here, who is a uh, who is a CRM archaeologist, who is a cultural resource management archaeologist in the public sector and has been for some time. Gets a lot of good points in there. Uh,
Which,
Job security
yeah.
and getting a job and keeping the job can be hell and a half because you are hired by the project and the project lasts for a week.
Yeah, so there's a few different ways in which you can get employment. One of which is doing a project by project basis, but that isn't always the case. And um, I guess I should also give my experience. I worked previously as a field technician at a state historic agency, so a government affiliation. And there's some places that will hire you on for the project, but then there's also some that will hire you on for the season. And the season usually runs the non-winter months. So for us, it was usually April through November before snow really froze the ground that we would be outside digging pretty much no matter the weather conditions. Whether it was hot, cold, rainy, sunny, the only downside is if it was lightning, we would pack up and go home. So
Mhm.
weather is one of the big downsides in my opinion.
Yeah, yeah. Weather is a major factor. One of the biggest things you've got to look out for is no matter what the weather is like, you can and will give yourself heat stroke. I am very much known to do this to myself. I am I have mostly done academic archaeology, which is a lot of field school type things. Essentially, this is where uh, if you are getting a degree in archaeology, you are taken out into the field by some academic archaeologists, and you go over the basics and you learn the tools of the trade, or you are teaching other people the tools of the trade if they know less than you about it, as sort of this like informal hierarchy to just get things done.
Usually
You
not
can
as
and
time
will give,
sensitive either, I would say.
yeah. Oh yeah, CRM work is usually coming in on the schedule of somebody else's bulldozer.
Yeah.
Whatever you find is there to be found and then immediately destroyed by people who couldn't care less, which, as Lieberman says, that can be very depressing.
Yeah, it's very difficult, and you have to understand that there's a certain level of you want to save every little thing and you want to be able to protect everything, but in the scope of the grand scheme of things, with money, with projects, developments, there's very few things that's going to actually hold up or stop a development. So you have to understand that, and you have to do the best of your ability to identify any cultural resources. But I think before we get too deviated there, I think weather environments and
Yeah, yeah, definitely.
pests are a big one too. So
Oh
like
yes, yes.
ticks, chiggers,
Yep.
any.
Be expected to be outside in boots, in long clothing. You want much of your body covered as possible. You want to you want to be covered, and you're going to be in very hot, very sunny weather, doing a lot of exertion while you do this. So always bring lots of water. Bring ways of keeping water cold. Drink as much of it as possible. You will get heat stroke. You will not see it coming. You will be drinking water and you will still get heat stroke. If you that is okay, is perfectly acceptable. Most people are very understanding of it. It's not weakness. It's not you not doing your job. It's not you not being cut out for it. It's just a thing that happens to everyone at some point.
And
Uh, and
to
contrary to things I have been told by other archaeologists on site, it is not a cop out.
Yeah, well, and the other
Do
thing too,
not listen to someone if they tell you to work while you have heat stroke.
the other thing too, before we get a little too tangential away, is you want to wear long sleeves because it protects you from the bug bites and from like unwanted things like poison ivy, poison oak, poison sumac. There's a lot of plants out there to get you, and there's a lot of bugs out to get you, but also the sun is out to get you. It's a really pervasive issue in the field of archaeology of skin cancer. So you want to protect as much of your body from the UV rays before that happens. And Cullum, as you mentioned right there, that is one of the other downsides that can potentially happen with archaeology and with the field is you very much can get a lot of bad people to work with who may not be that the nicest, or you may not work up to their standard, or whatever it may be. I personally have had positive and negative interactions no matter what level or where I did the archaeology. Although I feel like that's also very common with any profession or any job.
Yeah, I had someone threaten to throw a shovel at my head while I was lying on the ground vomiting from heat stroke. So I had actual psychopaths.
I
Uh, do not that is not typical of archaeologists. I would say I don't know what was wrong with that person,
yeah.
but you will meet all sorts of people in this job, and that can be very good or very interesting stories to tell later.
Every field school has high emotions and heated
Yeah,
exchanges,
every job has high emotions. You're working hard in uncomfortable conditions on a clock.
but the second point that Lemurian man um, Lemurian man makes a good point of is being in the field can be very difficult because if you are working in the public sector, you will be on the road most of the time, if not all of the time. You may get lucky and find projects close to your home, but there's a good chance you'll be in a hotel room, in a remote area, not near anyone, not near anything, and you'll be away most of the time. And if you do academic archaeology, well, congrats. You're only going to be gone for maybe a month or two at a time, usually in some far off, exotic, broad place.
Yep. There is a lot of difficulties with interpersonal relationships just by virtue of the fact that you are mastering the use of a hot plate in a hotel more often than you are talking to, you know, people in your friend group or even in your family.
But even
Um,
with all those downsides, I do think that there's a lot of really cool things. I think this could be a good pivot point unless you have additional downsides.
well, I was just gonna say, you know, get all that removal from like friend groups and family and things is like can actually be an upside if you want to get away from the drama. You have a legitimate excuse
Yeah,
of being in the places where cell phones and the internet apparently hasn't been invented yet.
but see, there's also we talk a lot about the downsides, but there's a reason people do it, and there's a reason we do it, and there's a lot of upsides. Like as you mentioned, if you are an introvert and if you do like to be away from people, well, boy, howdy, do I have a job for you. You'll be in
Yeah.
remote places, you'll be far away from those people, and if you aren't doing field work and you're doing lab work or collections work, well, then you get to spend hours and hours in an isolated repository working
Yeah,
on
there's
artifacts.
there is look, you're making it sound worse than it is right there.
No,
That's your upside. It's like no, you get to spend a lot of time with things uh you know whether nature is something you like, there's a lot of nature, or if you like objects, if you're into categorizing things or seeing how things fit together. If you like puzzles, this is a very good job for you. And I'm just standing here listening all things that I hate doing that are somehow my job.
but see,
That I actually love this job, and you know, like in this field is just you know there's a pervasive saying in archaeology. The job you hate is the job you're doing.
it's just there's a lot of cool things about it. I love getting to be outdoors, getting paid to do it. But the thing that speaks to me and that I think speaks to a lot of our colleagues is being able to make that connection between yourself and the artifacts of what you're studying and the people behind those artifacts. Because at the end of the day, while we're studying the physical remains, we're trying to know more about the people who live there, who made them, who traded up and down, who moved back and forth, who just were living their lives in the physical remains of what is left. It it was such a unique experience for me to be able to touch a projectile point, an arrowhead, and go, wow, someone made this 6,000 years ago, and it is still here, and it is still it's in my hand. I'm the first person to potentially have touched this in thousands of years.
Yeah. I had a similar experience with some rather rather well intact pieces of whiteware that we came across, which is a form of historical Victorian period ceramics, and it's just the picking up and looking through the attention to all the different details, from the exact coloration of the cream to the tint of the green to the pattern that it was that it was used in all these attention details, all these very specific things that tell you exactly when and where and for whom something was made.
Yeah.
Just all these little things that no one ever thinks about, that just paint a very complete picture of what this object was and what it was intended for by the people who made it or the person who made it, is a very big thing. And this is, I think both of us are coming into archaeology from an anthropology degree, so the concept of interpersonal thought of how to, the question of how to people,
Yeah.
if you will, is a very driving force, and that can be very much fulfilled with archaeology. With every artifact you turn out of the dirt, as soon as you see it, it's the joy of discovery, I think, is the driving force for archaeology. Even if you're discovering something that someone else has, found a million times over, and someone else will find a million times again after you.
And I think that's a big thing there, that whole idea of discovery, because there's a whole generation of archaeologists that got involved because of Indiana Jones, because of Lara Croft, because of all these modern cultural phenomena that exist and that help promote the field. Each one centers around that whole idea and that fantasy of discovery. And I think you hit it on point right there. Whether you're looking through collections that are already in a museum or in an archive, or whether your boots in the ground actually excavating, your the information potential is there. That information, that ability to create new information or to discover new information is ever present, and there's always more connections to be made. I mean, your thesis topic is comparing and contrasting two different archaeological groupings, correct?
Yes. My big master's thesis is looking at cities and from two completely different cultures in two completely different regions in two completely different time periods, attempting to accomplish the same goal and building the exact same thing. I shouldn't say exact, but I'm going to.
And there's these connections that are universal. So many things were developed independently, and there's just, it's very fascinating, and I think it stokes a lot of imagination in many academics, and I'm speaking very broadly here as to try not to speak too much for people, but I know for me the potential of information and that connection to the people and the history is what really drives me. And it's really interesting because when I'm in the field, there are times I love it and there are times that I hate it. But the second I leave the field and I go back to the lab or I go home for the day, I think back to myself like there's no greater job on this planet. I just got paid to go play in the dirt. I got paid to go dig holes for a living. Could be sitting in an office working a 9 to 5, but instead I get to contribute to history.
Yeah, he calls it playing in the dirt. It is not playing, especially with rocks and roots. Trees are your enemy. You think shade is your friend. Shade is not your friend. Shade means you're going to have to beat the heck out of some roots.
Yeah, roots are rough, but
Shade. Yeah. Shade is horrible.
I think that's a nice little overview. If you guys want us to go into more detail about the pros and cons of archaeology, this just was a very interesting thread that we came across and that I think sparked a good bit of discussion because these are conversations that you don't have on the outside. They're internal conversations that tend to happen after you've already committed to the field.
Yeah, and the thing with archaeology that I would say before we I think we're heading towards a log off here and sign out, but the gift of archaeology is the gift to understand. Like that's the purpose, and so it's yeah, there are hardships, the weather, the work schedule, the locations,
The people.
why can't the archaeology already be where the people are? Oh wait.
Oh, about that.
Yeah. Yeah, so many reasons, but yeah, it's the archaeology is the gift of understanding. We seek to know and understand, and that is the fulfillment, and that is why you do it. And I see in this thread there's there is another podcast that I'm definitely not going to be digging around to see what they do uh, later on. Not to draw attention to the competition, but to draw attention to well, knowledge.
But if you guys have a topic that you want us to discuss or something that you'd like to have us go more in detail with, be sure to drop it in the comments down below, and to subscribe if you want to see more stuff like this. Please let us know. We're really trying to do some different things here and mix things up, keep it interesting and entertaining. And as archaeologists, this is where we are able to contribute and have the best, I don't know, response.
Yeah, yeah, that seems about right. And if you made it this far in the video, type the word Gwendolyn in the comments down below to force her to join us for some of these. She is a touch camera shy, and that's why you don't see her as often as you see the two of us in these videos. So if you want to make her appear, you know what to do.
All right. On that note, we will see you guys in the next video. Be sure to check us out. Yeah, we're going to see if we could potentially make this a little series. Don't know how frequent, but be sure to check out for some more. Suspense.